All right, well, some of you have expressed some concern or confusion over week one's study module concerning SQL and key fields. And I apologize for the confusion on this. This is an activity that was designed originally for online students, not online, sorry, on campus students in class to have an in-class discussion, and it doesn't really lend itself well to online study, but because the on-campus students also use this Canvas module, it stays in here. So I meant to go over this last week in our Wednesday meeting, but was kind of battling a bit of a stomach bug and didn't feel well, and I apologize. I had forgotten to get to this. So let me briefly go over it real quickly, and hopefully that didn't cause too many of you too much anxiety. But steps 4 and 5 was where most of the confusion occurred. Step 4 says use the SQL language document to complete the activity. Part of the problem here is this document has nothing to do with step 5. First thing of all, I'm just going to cover some different types of SQL language. So different SQL commands or clauses will refer to different types of functions. So data definition language, or abbreviated DDL, are going to be things that define the structure of the database itself, so or the tables or the objects within the database. So you're going to create, you're going to alter, drop, rename, truncate, comment. Those all have something to do with the structure and layout of the objects in the database. The data manipulation language then becomes how you interact with the data in those tables. So you can either select or to view it, or insert, update, delete, things like that, or merge, replace. Now, data control language has to do with user permissions and who has access to information. So you can grant or revoke permissions. And then finally, transaction control language governs data maintenance with regard to integrity of the data flow when you're processing long scripts. So this is, we'll get into this toward the end of the semester. We'll talk about ACID compliance. Make sure the database stays atomic. Oh goodness, I can't remember the acronym now. Anyway, we'll get into ACID later on, but it has to do with making sure that when changes are made, all of the changes get done before they get committed, so that you don't end up having data gaps or data losses with when processing long scripts. So that's where the control language comes into play. Some where clause operators, these are some things most of you should be familiar with if you've had any kind of IT background at all. Equals, less than, greater than, like, in between, between, and is. So those are on in your where clause to determine if a certain field or element meets a condition. Logical operators and or not. Scalar functions means we have one value output, and then aggregate functions takes multiple values across multiple records and aggregates them. So you count, sum, average, min, max, and those will come in very. Those will be very, very important later on in the semester as we get into scripting. We'll start doing those around week, I think, 6 or 5 or 6. So make sure that you pay attention to the aggregate functions and how to use those with grouping clauses. Again, we'll cover that more in detail later on. So that's just a little bit about what document 4 is covering, some different elements of the SQL. Now, activity 5, keys. What we're doing here is we're just going to look at a list of, so we have different types of keys, right? There's primary keys, foreign keys, candidate, composite, natural, surrogate, and non-primary. Now, these are all some things you should have been reading about in chapter 1 and chapter 2 reading. And so I'm not going to get into the definitions of each of those. But what we're doing here then is we have 3 different hypothetical tables and some elements or fields in each of those tables, so attributes. And we're going to go through those attributes, kind of determine which of those, if any, meet the definition of which types of keys. So put it into Word over here. So I already went ahead and grabbed the course key, the course table. I just grabbed course ID, name, and department ID. I left off course number, term, year, and section. The reason I did that is these fields don't really relate to a unique value. So keys must relate to a unique value for each record in a table. So anything flagged with an ID, you're going to want to automatically note that that's probably going to be a key, right? And then other items may or may not be, and we'll kind of talk about how we can identify those. So your course ID is going to be your a natural key is one that's naturally occurring in the data. And again, when you have the ID suffix added to an attribute, that's usually an indicator that it's not a natural key, that it's a surrogate or artificially created key. So that one's going to be a surrogate key, as is department ID. That's a quick just overview check. Anywhere where you have that ID thrown on there, it's almost exclusively a surrogate. So that's a quick cheater way to do that one real fast. And then everything else is naturally occurring within the data. So a name, that's a natural attribute of a course. So that's a natural key. Again, VIN, that's a unique naturally occurring attribute of every vehicle. Model. Now, natural and surrogate are mutually exclusive. So you're going to have either a natural or a surrogate marked for each and every one of these. Now, foreign key refers to a field that is the primary key in another table. So for this case, department ID is a foreign key coming in from the department table, as is the make ID and the officer ID down here, department and office ID. Composite keys are ones that have to be put together in order to combine and make a completely unique value. For example, let's take a look at the employee here. You may have several employees with the first name of John, or you may even have several with the last name of Smith, but you might probably not, again, not necessarily guaranteed, but you're less likely to have a John Smith in multiple locations. So you're going to go ahead and mark that as a composite key. You're going to have to combine those together. In fact, you may need to actually add additional fields to limit the to a unique outcome for a composite key. So here with last name, first name, you may need to add something to the effect of date of birth or something like that that would give you a truly unique record for every single person. Now, a candidate is one that's just a potential key. We don't know for sure if it's going to end up being key. So I would say all of these that I've written down here would qualify as a candidate key. So I'm not going to bother checking over it now. And then finally, in the primary key here is almost always going to be your course ID, or sorry, your ID field. So in this case, course ID. In this case, automobile ID. Now, the VIN can also be a primary key. And you will only have one primary key per entity. So if you ended up choosing the VIN as a natural primary key, you would really have no need for the automobile ID field at all. And you might actually drop it, unless, again, you're looking to optimize your database by indexing on the automobile ID. Indexing is a process where your server will categorize and flag your values for quick sorting and easier matching. And integers tend to index better than variable character fields like VIN would be. And so automobile ID would be a more efficient in a database setting. However, a VIN is a sufficient primary key because it is going to be a unique ID. Similarly, a social security number or a tax ID would be a sufficient primary key for an employee. But again, you could run into some data security issues with that where you wouldn't want to necessarily show the tax ID. And so there's reasons to go both directions. So there's plenty of room for discussion with regard to keys. And that's why this is meant to be more of a class discussion. But those are just some things to cover, to consider as you look through these. You're more than welcome to continue the discussion on the week 1 discussion board if you have more thoughts or insight with regard to what should be what kind of key field here. But again, this is not an assignment that needs to be turned in. This was just a matter of discussion. So I hope that helps, and hope we'll try and stay ahead of confusion like that in future weeks. But, thank you for your patience as we streamline this course.